When we got this, it's not a secret because it's been in the media and everything that Lucy Letby had been moved off the ward. The deaths and collapses had stopped. The immediate question for me, once I'd said, yeah, we'll investigate that, was, well, why don't you go and arrest her right now? Which was a good question, quite difficult not to answer. But ultimately, we've seen many times in investigations like this where we've gone the wrong way. Police nationally have gone the wrong way, jumped into a suspect. Now, my view of that was, by investigating that it could be anyone means we're not focused on one person. So investigating that it could be anything means we're not focused on any one event, which means that when you come later on and the defence want to attack your investigation for being, you chose it was Lucy Letby, you chose it was this event. No, we didn't choose that, and we didn't choose that. Actually, I had a choice. I'd have wanted the experts to come back and said, we found it, it was a bad bug in the water and that happened. I can tell parents that it was tragic, but this is not murder. I'm Detective Superintendent Paul Hughes, Senior Investigating Officer with Operation Hummingbird. What I was presented with was effectively a number of reports written in medical jargon that tried to explain why babies had collapsed and why there was effectively a spike in numbers at the Countess Chester Hospital. For me, there was more questions than answers, so I determined that we should investigate. What we found out was, in neonatal infants, it's very clear that they know when a baby's going to collapse and die, and parents are already prepared for that. And that neonatal units, which my expectation was that it's full of sick babies that could die at any moment, it's actually not. So they explained that these babies do not die. So if a baby collapses, it's usually expected, and even on the outside chance of it being unexpected, it's always explainable. What separated this collection of events away from everything else was that they were unexpected and unexplained, and that was then determined as the key significant factor for me deciding this is not necessarily suspicious at that time, but the events surrounding it needed to be investigated with an open mind. We eventually received signed statements from Dr. Evans, who was our primary lead witness, and Dr. Evans had defined in his statements that he thought the children had been harmed by infliction, and a variety of different methods for that. And then at the same time, the analytical product had been coming together and the investigative product had been coming together, so it had reconstructed. So at that point I knew that in most cases we'd been able to prove already that Lucy Letby was present. There was more work to be done, and I could prove that it was inflicted harm. So the three things we wanted to try and draw together was medically what happened. Do we have a murder? Do we have a natural occurring death? Secondly, what did that shift look like? That was the timely bit, because you're taking statements of nurses and doctors, and then the analytical part, which was phenomenal work done by Claire and Kate on building that factual evidence, which is, we know Lucy Letby was present, we know, more importantly, other people weren't. I'm going to declare now it's criminality. Tell parents, so we're going to bring parents in and tell them for the first time we think their baby's been murdered and attempted to be murdered. Many with twins, triplets, siblings, all affected. Horrific for the parents to have to deal with, because in my view, in a case that's gone on like this so long, they've dealt with the loss of their child, and then again and again and again. More trauma. Each time we do something, each time we arrest, each time we make a decision, each time we charge, parents are reliving. At that point, a difficult decision to make. In fact, the hardest decision to make of my career, I think it's fair to say, at that time, and probably still so. Do I arrest Lucy Letby for multiple murders and attempted murders? The arrest was planned for the purpose of obtaining evidence by questioning. Obviously, our evidence and our statistical analysis showed that Lucy Letby was present at everything. So there is in effect, she's a suspect, but she's also the key source of information. She knows more about this case than anyone else because our evidence would suggest that she's been there. Because of the very size of the investigation, it took that time, took that first year, 14 months, to build enough evidence to put us in a position where we could, ask her realistic questions and have some pretty robust knowledge about what we know has gone on. The amount of evidence we recovered from her home address was just not expected. So thousands and thousands of documents, many devices that led to downloads of 500,000 pages of information that we didn't expect to find. We didn't expect her to have kept a catalogue year on year on year. Between 18 and 19 particularly, that was the key focus, all the evidence that we covered from the addresses. More medical evidence, pathology, more peer review work, but the review of the exhibits found at the address took a long time. And then what came from that is a load of inquiries, external inquiries, across the country, different parts of the country, tracking people down who'd known Lucy. As we started building up a suspectology, if you like, of history of her, trying to look for, in any way, shape, or form, answers to maybe why. We needed to ask her more questions, but subsequently 3 further cases of attempted murder by this time had been identified. So we wanted to ask her about them, and also we knew that she would write a lot, and she did. We'd seen it during the first arrest, so we wanted to arrest her and see what she'd been writing about maybe in the year that we've been investigating. The third arrest in November 2020 was because we had exhausted sufficient lines of inquiry, and that's where we were really, because if we got any further, we'd have probably lost the opportunity to interview her at the final time, and we wanted to ask some questions, and the Crown Prosecution Service wanted us to ask some questions. But if you get too far and you're already in a position where you will charge, then PACE only allows you to clarify some things. It doesn't allow you to investigatively question. So it was that balance where we were almost satisfied, but not quite. And we had conversations with the CPS. It just seemed at the time was right. The stars had aligned in evidential process, and we arrested her. And at that third point, we had every intention of arresting her and seeking charge advice, and being successful with getting charge advice. The charge was read out and didn't know what people would do. Would people clap, cheers, celebrate, cry? And it was nothing. It was nothing as in it was absolute silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Nobody said anything. Some people became emotional, took themselves out of the room. People left the room to spend some time on their own, and it was probably sort of like 10-15 minutes really before anybody said anything. It was almost like everybody's, instead of being something to celebrate, I think it felt like a profound loss. I think it was that realization when you heard it in that context. All these babies have been murdered. I think there was a realization of actually people who have children of their own, who have seen their own children grow up, what that actually means now. We're saying that these children would have all had their lives had they not been murdered or damaged or affected or inflicted by an attempted murder by Lucy Letby. It's that overarching aspect of the families at the heart of what we do. It was so important for us as a team that they got their time in court and it wasn't affected by clerical or administration errors or errors in evidence. And where is everything we've done so far going to get its most stringent test? And it's right there in a courtroom. It's probably 10% excited it was getting started and a 90% nervousness that it runs well. Work sort of starts now again in preparation for what's going to be a massive trial. Make sure that, you know, the disclosure machine swings into action really, and the amount of challenges we believed we had really became a reality at charge. But because we'd sort of allocated a number of events to individual officers, there was a real team ethic and a real team bond that I don't believe I've worked with before. I've worked with some terrific teams in my career, but this team on this job, people were doing it because they had such a vested interest. I genuinely believe if you'd said to people, we're not paying you, they'd have still come in.